Technology is any modification of the natural or design world developed to fulfill human needs or desires. So as future engineers, technology is intertwined with our lives. But how do we know if technology is or will be neutral or not? To discuss this, joining with us today is Professor Priyan Dias. He's a senior professor in civil engineering at Division of Building and Structural Engineering of University of Moratuwa. His expertise ranges from civil engineering to artificial intelligence, and he's a renowned research professor. I think he's the best person to enlighten us with today's topic with his wide range of expertise. We'll be running a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so if you have any questions, feel free to send them to the moderators directly during the session. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Professor Priyan Dias to ask, is technology neutral? Welcome, Professor.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. So I suppose you can see the screen.
Yes.
Now I have a number of things in this cover page. Actually, this question is something that I have been looking at as well. I don't know the answers fully, so maybe in my discussion with you, you also might be able to help me to come out with some answer. Now, there are a number of things I want to say about this. Now, to study questions like this, we need to move from engineering to philosophy, right? Now, you might get worried about this word philosophy, but all of us have some kind of philosophy of life, right? The philosophy is maybe one way that we understand the world, right? Of course, we can use engineering and mathematics also to understand the world, but the world is a bit bigger than that, right? So thank you, Vilochana, I think introduced done in concrete technology and tsunami resilience and all. So last year or a year before, last year actually, I think I wrote this book, right? Philosophy for Engineering. It's a bit expensive, but you can get your library to get a copy if you are interested, right? Now, one of the philosophers I looked at in this book is a fellow called Martin Heidegger, right? Now, he has written a book called The Question Concerning Technology and Other Essays, right? Now, in this book, he asks this question. Actually, this is one essay, right, among other essays. So now his language is a bit difficult to read when it's translated from German to English. But he says we are delivered over to technology in the worst possible way when we regard it as something neutral. But this conception of it, to which we particularly like to do homage, makes us utterly blind to the essence of technology. So what he's trying to say is most people think that technology is neutral, right? It is humans that use technology, and you can do good things or bad things with that technology, right? So that is the question we want to explore. And like I said, I am a fellow inquirer with you as also, in case I want to sort of do a revision of this book or whatever it is, right? One other thing I want to say at the start, right? This talk I first gave to a group called the Fellowship of Christian University Students, right? So for questions like this, we need to look to philosophy and also perhaps to some, because in some ways, religions are also ways in which we interpret the world to ourselves, right? Most of these university religious organizations, they only do these rituals, like maybe Bauddha Sangamaya does a Pirit ceremony, or Muslim Majlis does prayers, Hindu society, I think, does that, Saraswati Puse, the Catholic society does a mass and things like that. So those are okay. But as university students, I think, whatever religions you all belong to and religious associations, maybe you should start asking questions like this. Is technology neutral? right?
Professor, are you able to
because,
put it in?
I think those are the.
Are you able to put
Sorry?
it in presentation mode?
Yeah, but I want to stop now. I just want to
Okay, sorry.
because now, okay, that's okay. Now what I want to do is, what I want to do is now I want to just start with 2 videos, right? So in order to get us into this subject, right? So I don't know how good the quality and things like that is. Let me see whether I can get that video. How do I do that? I think I need to go there first, no? Okay. And then that's right. Okay. I think I should do share sound and optimize for video clip, perhaps. Share. Right.
The Narmada Valley Development Project envisages building 3,200 dams on a single
Can you
river.
hear this?
And it's
Yes, but it's still
Yeah.
too small. If you can put it in full screen.
Okay, this one full screen, right? Okay, so this is by a person called Arundhati Roy in India. Arundhati Roy is famous for writing a book, a novel called The God of Small Things. It's a Booker Prize winning novel, but she is now a social activist, right? So she is talking about one dam that is being built in India called the Narmada Dam, right? Okay, let me see whether I can play it and also do full screen.
It is the biggest river valley project in India that will alter the ecology of an entire river basin, that will affect the lives, for better or for worse, of 25 million people, that will submerge 4,000 square kilometers of dry deciduous forest, and will end up turning the Narmada into a step reservoir, like a shining staircase of amenable water, with destruction in its wake. We are all taught from the time we're little children in school. Chacha Nehru said that dams are the temples of modern India, etc. Never mind that Chacha Nehru actually reversed his view, and no one is taught about that. In the local pain for national gain mythology of big dams, the costs are always underplayed and the benefits inflated to absurd levels. In its official publicity film for the dam, the Gujarat government claims that it will bring water to 30 million people.
Blazing sun, burning sands. Imagine trudging miles every day just to fetch water. 30 million people will soon receive water thanks to the Sardar Sarovar Narmada Dam. Say yes to Narmada.
If you present a project saying, oh, you're going to displace 200 villages and actually bring prosperity to millions of people, it sounds like a reasonable deal. But in fact, it's just simply untrue. It's just one big lie. The mathematics is wrong. That's the problem here. What big dams do is that they centralize resources like water. They snatch a river away from the poor. They centralize the water. And then they decide who can get it. And who can get it? The big sugar farmer lobbies, the big industrialists, the big farmers, the politically powerful lobbies. People melt into the darkness and disappear, and the sugarcane fields spring up in Gujarat, and the industries spring up in wherever it is, and then they say, look, there's a green revolution. You have the Bargi Dam, for instance, the first dam that was built on the Narmada Valley, where before they built the dam, said that 70,000 people from 101 villages would be submerged. And then when the dam was completed, they closed the gates and just filled the reservoir one monsoon to see what would happen. And in fact, 114,000 people in 162 villages were submerged. The water just rose overnight, driving people out of their homes, taking their children and their cattle and running for their lives while their homes floated away. There was no resettlement. Even the so-called model resettlement villages, one or two of them got submerged. And now the people who've been displaced by Bargi are living in slums in Jabalpur, begging, plying rickshaws. These were farmers once. And today, that Bargi Dam, 11 years later, irrigates 5% of the land it was supposed to irrigate. It actually irrigates less land than it's submerged. July 99 will bring the last monsoon of the 20th century. The ragged army in the Narmada Valley has declared that it will not move when the waters of the Sardar Sarovar Reservoir rise to claim its lands and homes. Whether you love the dam or you hate it, whether you want it or you don't, it is in the fitness of things that you understand the price that's being paid for it, that you have the courage to watch while the dues are cleared and the books are squared. Our dues, our books, not theirs. So be there.
Right. Okay. So tell me what you thought about that video. Now this involves some interactive participation. We cannot wait only till the Q&A to hear your voices. We need to hear your voices now also. What feelings did you have? So this is about dam technology, right? Okay. So Arundhati Roy, of course, seems to be against dam technology. Now, some of you all may be civil engineers who are hoping to build these dams, right? You know, soon after I graduated in 1980, a lot of my batchmates and juniors worked on the Mahaveli project, right? So one of my good friends worked on the Victoria Dam, and there were other people who worked on Victoria, Randanigala, Rantambe. So are those good things or are they bad things? So this is a dam technology, right? Now we need to find out, is it neutral? Neutral means it can be good, it can be bad, depends on how you use it. Not neutral means either it can be very good or it is always bad, right? What do you all think? Sinhala gunat kiyanna puluwan. Tamil, of course, I have a problem. Demala katha karanna nam bad, right? I cannot speak Tamil, right? What do you all think? You can use the chat even to answer. Anyone will speak? No one is saying anything.
So we are using dams to in Sri Lanka. We are using dams to farming and
Yes.
developing land
Yes.
in non-developed areas.
Yes.
But I personally think that the number of dams on that river is too much, and so it says that it's compacting the area that it's supposed to feed by developing a dam. So I think it's bad planning rather than bad technology.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Right. So basically you are saying the technology is neutral. It should be planned better. Any other ideas about that? Do other people agree with him or disagree with him? Right. So one of the things that is spoken about in that that video is that you know, she said local pain for national gain. I don't know whether you heard those words. Local pain for national gain. Local pain means if you are going to build a dam That means you are going to inundate a certain area because you are going to store water. So some people gain means, you know, many other people will get that water. Yeah, local pain for national gain, right? Many other people will get that water, and therefore, you know, actually, she has written an article also about this, and the caption of the article is what Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, is supposed to have said. He is telling the people who are being displaced by the dam that they are doing it for the greater common good. The greater common good, right? So that's an article that she has written in addition to this video, right? So you have to mitigate some of the bad effects, right? So one of the ways in which you evaluate this technology is to see who gets the benefits, who bears the costs. So some people lose their homes, other people get water for their sugarcane industry and various things, or maybe for electricity power supply. Now in Sri Lanka, some of these dams supply power also, right? So is it fair? How much fairness must we give to the people who are displaced by the dam, right? Okay, so that is one aspect of it, right? So even then, you might say that the technology is still neutral, because like Vilochana said, if it is planned properly, then it will be okay, right? But the problem is that most people who do these dams, in order to mitigate the cost, they have to incur more money, right? If you want to build new villages for the people who are displaced, then your cost of the project goes up, right? Then the benefit upon cost ratio reduces. So there is always a tendency not to take very seriously the welfare of the people who are affected by the dam. That is one thing. Then another thing that she said was this idea of centralization. I don't know whether you heard that word, right? Now, earlier the Narmada River, it goes from one point to another, and everybody near the river, they can have access to it. So even the people with the sugarcane plantations, they can also use the water, right? But the moment you build a big dam, then you centralize. Then there are very few people who will decide when we are going to release the water, when we are going to store the water. So poor people who are living on the side of the river, they will not get a chance in the decision-making process to decide when the water is going to get released and when the water is going to get stopped, right? So that centralization, perhaps, maybe something that makes the technology not neutral, right? Okay, so that's one kind of technology, just to get us thinking, right? So now let me share the next one. I have to get this right. I think what I do is, oops. I can't find the button to share the screen. Okay, let me see. Do I do? Can you see this video that is playing? Sorry?
No, sir, we can't see.
No?
Yeah.
Something correct.
No.
So I know how to handle this. Right.
Yeah, we can see, sir.
Okay.
With technology. Her conclusion, we really need to put down
Right.
the phone.
Now, this is about a different kind of technology, a more modern kind of technology than dams, right? This is about mobile phones, which maybe all of you have, right? So this is an author called Sherry Terkel. She is a professor, not in engineering, I think, but maybe in something else. Where her book, the name of her book is written here called Reclaiming Conversation. She's at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is of course a very famous engineering school. But listen to this interview that she's giving to a television station, right?
And talk. That's also the main premise of her new book, Reclaiming Conversation. Author Sherry Terkel is a psychologist, founder and head of the MIT Initiative on Technology and Self. Sherry, it's good to see you again.
Pleasure to be here.
So what all the world wants to know is, do you ever engage in phubbing? That's what people want to know.
No, I don't know how.
What is phubbing?
Phubbing is, let's say we're talking and I make eye contact with you, but
Yeah.
the whole time I'm doing this, under the table, I'm sending text messages.
And you never do that?
No, I don't. I can't. Because kids learn to do it when they get phones in middle school and they want to text during class, and that's basically the moment when you learn this skill. And I was just.
So you aged out of it.
I aged out of it. Yeah.
How widespread is this problem? Are you blowing something into a greater proportion than it deserves? How widespread is this obsession, this omnipresence of the phone?
It's there. I mean, 89% of Americans say in the last Pew study, which is the organization that studies our digital life, 89% of Americans say that in their last conversation, they took out a phone. And 82% say that it diminished the conversation.
So
my premise is we're doing something that we don't feel good about and that we know is diminishing our contact with each other.
So that's the bottom line. So it's essentially, it's a barrier, you say, between us having a, how about multitasking? Some of us, excuse me, believe we can multitask. You don't buy it.
Well, it's not true. Research shows that, in fact, multitasking is a myth. Your brain can't do it, but multitasking is a vicious thing and a kind of scary thing, because for every task you add, you feel like you're doing better and better at every task, whereas in fact, your performance deteriorates for every task you add as you add a task.
Have you been watching me work? It sounds
I've studied this for years. So we do more and more, and in fact accomplish less and less, but feel that we're doing better and better.
I feel more efficient. I'm not more efficient.
No, you're less and less efficient. So for a lot of these things, we have to really understand our vulnerability. Multitasking is a great example of where you have to understand that you're vulnerable. Your brain is playing tricks on you, and you have to correct.
You know, this is a great book, by the way, and I see myself far too often in this, as I assume most readers do. But, you know, you go, I would say, I don't know if it's an extreme, you go to the extent of saying, it's not just your phone is sitting, well, actually, your position is just having this here creates a barrier between, I'm not looking at it, I'm not doing anything with it, don't touch my phone,
No,
please.
as a matter of fact, I go further than that.
What is it?
I'm saying that a phone that's off and turned over, the research shows that if we were having lunch and that phone was on the table, turned over and turned off, would change the conversation in two ways. The first way is that we would talk about more trivial things where we sort of wouldn't mind being interrupted. And secondly, we would feel less of an empathic connection to each other.
You know, speaking of empathic connection, the empathic connection that matters most is parent to kid, I assume. And I have seen in playgrounds when my kids were young, I am totally with you. This is the worst barrier between, what damage does that do in your estimation?
It's doing a lot of damage.
How so?
Because we find, first of all, let's just define the problem. You're in a playground and your kid is screaming, look at me, I'm on the jungle gym, I'm on the swing. And parents are literally doing their email. And what you see is that the children grow up after tugging at sleeves for years and years. They sort of decide that it's not going to happen with their parents.
But did we ever talk? Did we ever have these conversations before this was invented?
There's a difference. You know, I'm not arguing for a golden age of conversation. What's new is that people always feel that everyone's attention is divided. And that is genuinely new.
Can I tell you something? While you're talking, I'm embarrassed to admit this. I am literally, even though it's a prop, it's my phone, I am literally conscious of almost turning my head and looking at my phone. Let me, personal, I get it, and I am with you, even though I am a perpetrator in terms of. No, I am. But how about in a work setting? I mean, I've got my phone on my desk all the time. Is damaging there?
Well, it turns out that conversation is good for the bottom line at work. And all the studies show that if you let people have a certain kind of conversation, the kind that phones don't interrupt, if you create places in work that are device-free, you will be more productive, more collaborative.
Like the proverbial water cooler.
Like the water cooler.
Okay,
that had a lot
so Jonathan Franzen,
sense.
Front page New York Times book review. Look at the smile on her face. Front page says it is a sophisticated self-help book.
Yes.
So give me 2 tips, or give them 2 tips at home quickly if you can, about how to free yourself from this anchor.
Accept your vulnerability and design for conversation. That means make a kind of sacred space, a device-free space.
Like in your house?
Kitchen, dining room, car. It's the best thing you can do for your family, for intimacy, for empathy, for your life.
One more. Give me one more.
One more?
One more tip. You're a sophisticated self-help book author. I read it in the New York Times.
One more tip. I would say, don't. Your phone is ringing.
This is the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me. It is literally vibrating.
I'm going to get another tip. Your tip, okay. Another tip is don't fear at work the immediacy of a face-to-face conversation. People are finding ways around it, because as one person said to me, when I said, well, what's wrong with conversation? He said, I'll tell you what's wrong with conversation. It takes place in real time, and you can't control what you're going to say. Don't try to be perfect. Chill out. Allow yourself to be imperfect, and allow yourself, like you just allowed yourself to be imperfect. Be imperfect and be who you are.
We're out of time, but I'll text.
Right. Okay. So any thoughts about that video clip about the mobile phone? Right. So what they are saying is, what this lady is saying is that the mobile phone, destroys the kind of relationships that that people have with each other, right? Because always you are wondering whether somebody else is going to get a call, or whether you are going to get a call, and therefore people don't have good communication with each other. So now once again you can think, okay, there are many useful things for a mobile phone, right? Some of you may be these days listening to lectures on your mobile phone, right? Okay. So then, is that a bad technology, or is it just the way that we use it? How do we think about that? Any thoughts about that? Any thoughts about that? Anyone wants to say something? Anything on the chat? Nothing on the chat. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. So let me continue then. Right. So let's share this and let's make it full screen. So I have a few slides. I'm not sure whether I'm going to go through all of it. There's some kind of square that has come up in the middle of it. Why is that? Right. Okay. Right. So, right. Now, one of the things, especially that this philosopher called Heidegger spoke about, was that, especially in our relationship with technology, that there are a lot of things that are concealed, right? So it looks good on the outside, right? And also technology is something that, is very attractive, right? I mean, sometimes to the people who are involved in the technology. Now for you all, now, like I said, my batchmates went and worked on the Victoria Dam. It was very, very interesting, right? A very challenging project, right? So a lot of people are, interested in that project. I think somebody mentioned about artificial intelligence. I'm not really so much involved in artificial intelligence. I think Dr. Prince may be doing some work on artificial intelligence, right? But this idea about building a robot, right? Trying to make the robot be like a human, right? Those are very challenging things. And engineers and other people like those challenges, right? And apart from that, in many of these technologies, there are certain good things as well. There would be certain needs, right? I think it was Vilojana who said human needs or desires, right? Some of the things we need, some of the things we want, right? So I don't know whether I have the time, but I will see how much I can answer all these questions. So the first question, of course, is about the neutrality of technology. And there are various other things. Some of these examples are from history, right? Now, this is a very crowded slide, right? Now, the main story in this slide is that technology can have unintended consequences, right? So now the mobile phone especially, right? Now it is very useful, but you might find that, it is, reducing the quality of conversation that you have with your friends. When you become a parent, with your children, right? That conversation, is interrupted. And that, human beings are supposed to be social animals, right? Interacting with other people is good for us. It is something that makes us human, right? Now, it appears that this mobile phone enables us to have contact with other people through our conversations in the phone and then through WhatsApp groups. And it looks like we are now having conversations with so many people. But actually, those are not very deep conversations. Deep conversations are just often one-to-one in situations where you are physically present with another person, right? So when there are unintended consequences, then the engineering approach to that, or even the human approach, is to mitigate. First, to be aware, and then to mitigate means we have to make allowance for it, right? So now, in terms of being concealed, there are 4 different levels that I like to see. I like to think about technology, that it has increasingly, what shall I say, unseen or concealed effects. Now, the first obvious thing is that when technology is hazardous, right, in addition to being harmful, right? Now, of course, we know there is nuclear technology and also now carbon intensive technology, right? I mean, coal power plants and things like that, they deliver electricity, but they are also making our planet to get warmer and creating problems due to climate change, right? But even, there are some chronic effects. I think now one of your teachers in the civil engineering department, Dr. Subhashi De Silva, I think she does work on the effect of this vibratory equipment on workers on construction sites, right? So that is vibratory things, right? Then even when using computers, sometimes you might find, I don't know, maybe at your age you don't get it, but when you are a bit older, you might find joint aches and things like that, because for a long time you're seated in one place, right? So first of all, the idea that technology can be hazardous, most of us probably know that, and we try to escape from the hazard. Sometimes not easy to escape from the hazard. Now, for example, Iran is supposed to be having nuclear power, but the US is always watching Iran to check whether they are building a nuclear bomb, right? So it is very difficult to very, easy to go from one use of technology to another. I'm not saying that the US should be watching Iran, because US itself has nuclear bombs. But anyway, that's the way it goes, right? What is a little less, what shall I say, visible, something that Arundhati Roy was talking about, is that, some people pay for what other people get, right? So in order for, the dam to be of benefit for other people, then some people's homes have to get inundated. And you might give them new homes even, but I mean, just imagine yourself. I mean, you are used to living in a particular area in the country, and for maybe generations, you know the other people in that area, you know the weather in that area, right? Then suddenly you have to go and go and live somewhere else, right? Okay, so you know, some people are paying the price, right? Promoting injustice. So then you can try to maybe reduce that injustice, right? So there is an interesting example which I have not found. I mean, I just have only a little bit of evidence for this. Now, some of you may be knowing about this Unilever, right? The person who founded it is a very honorable gentleman, I think, called Lord Leverhulme, right? So this was in a place called, there's a place, Liverpool, right? Liverpool in England. Now, when Lord Leverhulme built this company and the factory, he also built accommodation for the people who were working in the factory, right? And everybody who was in his company. Now, he did a very interesting thing. You know, the housing for the managers, he put them as close as possible to the factory, right? And the housing for the workers, he put them at a certain distance away from the factory. Now, normally people will do it the other way around, because close to the factory, you will get noises, you will get smells, you know, it will be uncomfortable. But Leverhulme thought if he puts his managers close to the factory, then if the factory is going to know about it first, and the managers will do something to change the technology and make it less hazardous or troublesome to human beings, right? So those kinds of examples are not common, they are rare, but you know, there are people maybe who have done things like that. Okay, so this injustice. Third one is sociological effects, right? And here, once again, in you know, here also these may be neutral, right? In the sense that you know, I am saying it's not neutral because it can have unintended consequences. So let me give a few examples. Now, transportation. Okay. Now, because of transportation, you have mobility, right? Now, many years ago, maybe most of us were living in one village or another. Now, large numbers of people leave their villages and come to work in Colombo, right? And now sometimes people not only live in Colombo, they go and live in Australia. So their parents may be in some village or maybe in some outskirts of Colombo, but because of this mobility, they are working somewhere else. So when the parents get old, the children are now in Sydney or Melbourne, and they are not able to look after their parents, right? So can you see, transportation makes a lot of things possible for us. Maybe if you are in Sydney or Melbourne, you can even send money to your parents, but when they are ill, you cannot look after them in their old age, right? So can you see these sociological effects, right? So things like digital devices and things like that, all of those also we looked at. But now this is an interesting example, but it's not from you know, a Sri Lankan context, but nevertheless it's a very interesting example. So I will mention this, right? This is mentioned not by Heidegger, but one of the other philosophers, right? So he said, now in cold countries, you know, you need to keep warm, right? So the way that people kept warm was by having a fireplace, right? Those days, every house had a fireplace in the living room, right? So normally if you're outside the house, you wear all these warm clothes. When you come into the house, everybody sits near the fireplace, right? That is a place where everybody gets warm. Because everybody is sitting near the fireplace, there is conversation around the fireplace, right? But now with the advent of technology, you know, people discovered what is called central heating, right? There is some kind of gas furnace which nobody sees, and the hot air is now pumped to all the rooms, right? So you don't need to come to the living room to get warm. Even in your bedroom or your study room or the kitchen or anywhere, you can be warm, right? So it is very convenient, but it stops the conversation, right? So can you see, always, you know, it will have certain effects and you may not be aware of all of these effects, right? So that's one of the things that technology does, right? Also, it can have psychological effects. Now, one of the ways that happens, even though you may not think about it, is that we measure ourselves against our products, right? So I don't know whether you are management subjects, whether anybody talks about this idea of efficiency and effectiveness going to do a job, right? Whether at the first interview or later on for your promotions, right? People will, to look and see how efficient are you. Now, how did this efficiency come about, right? Probably because we invented clocks, right? So when we invent clocks, you can see the clock keeps the time, right? I mean, 600-700 years ago, people would not have been worried so much about time, right? Time was not so important. The moment you invent a clock, time becomes important. After that, we become measured by the clock, right? How good we are depends on, how closely we behave to a clock, right? Similarly, where computers are concerned, right? Now, some of you may be doing programming. Nowadays, there are a lot of easy programs, where you don't even need to do programming. I mean, it is very easy, but those days, especially when we were in university, all these problems we had to solve by writing Fortran code, right? Now, maybe you can do it on an Excel spreadsheet, right? But when you write Fortran code or any other code, you have to be very logical, right? So using computers means that you have to be a very logical person. After that, the only valuable people are people who are considered to be logical. Now, somebody may not be very logical, but that person may be able to, write poetry or do drama. But because they are not logical, the value that they have in society is not considered to be that great, right? So it can have these psychological effects as well. Okay, right. Now, apart from that, now most of what I said earlier, you can still argue that technology is neutral. There are good effects, bad effects. Sometimes the problem is that we do not see the bad effects, right? But if we make ourselves aware of it, we can mitigate for it, right? Okay, so even though, there is central heating, maybe in the home, there can be a rule that, every day, half an hour before dinner, everybody has to come down and meet. So like that, you are mitigating, right? You can have certain things like that. It's like that lady, Sherry Terkel, was saying, there are sometimes you should not use mobile phones, right? But some types of technologies, are biased, meaning that it is, it makes us behave and shapes us in a way that it is difficult to escape from, right? These technologies also may be good, right? But they create a certain kind of division in technology. Now this is called the spaghetti junction, right? Spaghetti junction. We don't have things like this, but we have many flyovers. I'm not sure where this is from. I think this is from a place called Birmingham in England, called the spaghetti junction, right? Many flyovers. Now, all of this technology, there is money that the government needs to spend money to build all of these things, right? So the thing is, all of this technology is used for people who have cars. And in some countries, it is very difficult to survive if you don't have a car, right? There isn't very good public transport. You can't get about by a bicycle. Imagine going on a push bike along these roads. Very difficult, right? So it means that it is favoring only a certain kind of person, right? And apart from that, of course, now using private cars, especially, you are using a lot of fossil fuels and you're contributing to global warming and all of that kind of thing, right? But you can see this technology, this, highway technology, sometimes it is difficult to mitigate against that, right? You are setting, a particular direction for society, right? Similarly, things like gated communities. Now, these examples are sort of civil engineering examples. You have to excuse me for that. I did talk about the mobile phones earlier. Now here also you find now some communities like this, you find that, there are a lot of people, houses in one particular area like this, there is a swimming pool, there is a tennis court, right? But you can see that there is an entrance here. right? And there is a gate there, sometimes difficult to see. Not everybody can come here. Very often to go to these gated communities, you can't just go and now visit somebody who is a friend or even an uncle of yours. You have to give the person a phone call. That person has to call the gate and say that so-and-so is coming to see me, right? So it means it creates that insider versus outsider mentality. Everybody inside here feels very safe, very secure. Okay, there is security here. It looks a very nice place to live in. And maybe when you become an engineer and you get a lot of money, if you get a good job or whatever it is, or I'm not saying a good job, a well-paying job, right? You might want to live in a gated community, right? So that might be good, but you remember that you are one of the insiders, and it is creating an outsider mentality for those who are not able to live in this gated communities, right? And similarly, now where dams are concerned, like Arundhati Roy was saying, it is creating a centralized facility, right? So centralized facility, apart from the fact that only few people can take decisions or do take decisions about the way the water is used, also these facilities need to be protected, right? So then there are security guards, right? So like that, if you keep going on, the entire country, might become like securitized, or even militarized. So no one who builds the dam thinks that they are contributing to a militarized society, but that might happen in a way that centralized facilities, create that kind of bias against, maybe ordinary people. Okay, so that's the second question I have asked, right? I think I have a few minutes more. This is also an interesting example. This is not from another country. Well, it is from another country, but it is from another time in history, right? So here, so a lot of you all might think technology is the key to progress, right? And that may partly be true. It may partly be true. Now, some people think that global literacy, now you and I can read, okay, and write and speak, okay? Well, certainly read and write. And a lot of people think that the Gutenberg Press was responsible for it, okay? So, I don't know, I can't see any of you all. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Now there is a person who has written an article called Technological Revolutions and the Gutenberg Myth, right? So this fellow called Gutenberg lived in 1490 or something like that, or that's when he invented this press, right? So now it is true that this printing press, earlier people used temples and monasteries, whether in the east or the west, right? They used to write things by hand. And certainly if you have a printing press, it is very useful, right? But the first book that was printed using the Gutenberg press, of course, because it happened in Europe, was a Bible, right? And there were only 200 copies of that Bible that were printed, right? It had to be printed on sheepskin, right? And so to print one Bible, it took about 50 sheepskins, right? And, also the Bible was printed in Latin because that was the language that people used in those days, right? So if you think about the first product of the Gutenberg press, it was meant only for a very few people, right? So it is difficult to think that the Gutenberg press was responsible for global literacy. Maybe it was a start, but there were many other technologies that were involved. For example, paper technology, how to make paper from wood, ink technology, then the power sources, how this hydropower and things like that, so that, these presses could be automated. The printing press design, different kinds of printing presses. So now if you look at the printing presses on which modern newspapers are printed, they are rotary presses, meaning that the press keeps rotating like that, right? So here, this is just a single block that is, put on the parchment or whatever, right? So there were many other technologies involved, but more than that also many other social conditions involved, right? So first of all, people needed to read, and the need to read was once again through religious communities and also mercantile communities. In other words, people who were traders, they needed to keep records of what they had sold, who were the people who had paid them money already, who needed to pay them some more money, right? So all of these things required people to read, okay? So there needed to be a demand for reading in order for literacy to take place, right? Then there were things like the French Revolution and American Revolution. Now you might wonder now how that contributes to global literacy. Well, it does, because in those days people thought that reading was meant only for men and people like that, right? So it is only the things like the French Revolution that promoted what is called the rights of man movement. It includes women also, of course, right? That's the way it is mentioned, right? That everybody was equal. The French Revolution, there were 3 slogans. I don't know whether you know it. It's in French: liberté, equality, fraternité, right? Liberty, equality, fraternity means brotherhood, right? Nowadays, of course, it could, involve sisterhood as well, but brotherhood means everybody, right? So because of that, there was the understanding that, even the common people had the same rights as the people who were, the descendants of kings and the descendants of noblemen, right? And so because of that, by maybe the 19th century, governments began to promote universal free education. And of course, in Sri Lanka, we had that in the 20th century, right? So it is because of all of these social concerns and social conditions that there is global literacy, right? Of course, technology had a part to play, right? But this was not the only single technology. There were other technologies, but even more important than the technology were the social conditions, right? So we have to be very careful if we say that technology is the key to progress, right? So I just thought of this example just now. Now let's take this vaccine technology, right? I hope all of you are trying to get the vaccine when it becomes available to you. Very important technology, right? But the vaccine technology itself, may not make people immune, right? Even with the vaccine, you must practice social distance. Even with the vaccine, people must recognize that they have to take the vaccine, right? A lot of people all over the world in different countries, some people are saying we should not take the vaccine and all of those things. So social conditions also need to change in order for progress to happen. We cannot depend on technology alone, right? I don't know, I'm getting close, I'm getting close to the end of my time, right? We have maybe mentioned some of these things also, right? It is true that technology eases burdens, right? Things like household technology like gas, water, and electricity, they make things very easy for people, right? Otherwise, you have to get water from the well, right? And, otherwise you have to use candles in order for children to study for examinations and things like that. So all of these things make life very easy for people, right? It also makes, gives access, right? There is transportation to capital cities, information channels through the television and internet, right? Also, it enables sort of people with less power to challenge people who have more power. Now, for example, doctors. Now, when you go to see a doctor, all the doctors know that the patients also are capable of reading the internet, right? So the doctors cannot, very soon, and even now, the patients will ask questions from doctors. Otherwise, earlier patients never asked questions from doctors. But now the patients also know something about medicine because they can look at the internet and find out about their condition, right? And then things like social media. Now, if you want to challenge the government, right, it is not easy to challenge the government. But a lot of people now, even in our country, there are various things said against the government because of things like WhatsApp and things like that, right? And in all other countries as well, right? So the challenging of power is also something that makes people more equal, right? So all of these things makes people more equal. So in that sense, technology, maybe, if technology works that way, then it's not only neutral, it is good, right? But often technology, you know, it divides people as well. Some people are able to afford it, some people don't, right? Now, even among yourselves, now you may be having to use a device for your lectures. If you have a younger brother or sister in a school, that person also may need a device. Some parents will not be able to afford one device for every child, right? But other parents might be able to do it, right? So then technology is something that divides, right? I remember when we were in second year in university, many, many years ago, right? Okay. So we were using log tables, right? And we were just about to get what is called a slide rule. Some of you may not know what a slide rule is. And then the university administration said, okay, we are prepared to allow the use of calculators in examinations, right? And there was a Moratuwa University Union meeting to decide, should we accept this or should we reject it? The people who wanted to accept it, of course, thought that, okay, now this is a good technology. People who wanted to reject it thought some of our batchmates may not be able to afford the calculator, not a computer, a calculator, right? Okay, I'll tell you the year. This was 1976, right? Now you know my age, right? So like that, one of the things is that there should always be debates about technology. That's why I said at the start also, you should debate these things, right? Even in your religious associations, right? Catholic Society, Bauddha Sangama and things like that. It's good to debate these things because these are ethical issues, right? Okay. Right, I'll skip that slide. Okay, now look at this, right? I'll finish with this, right? Now, there are 10 technologies on the left-hand side and the 10 technologies on the right-hand side. I think this is by 1989. This author says, these are the biggest achievements of the human race, right? Some people said that these are the biggest achievements of the human race, right? Now, I want to ask you, how many agree with the left-hand side and how many agree with the right-hand side? Can you in your chat write left or right so that I can see how many want the left-hand side and how many want the right-hand side? Can't you write left? Okay, somebody says right. Thank you. Left. Okay, somebody raised a hand. You want to speak? You can unmute and speak. Right. Somebody else said right. Right is getting more votes. Is that correct? Somebody has raised their hand. Okay, right again. I think right is getting more votes. Anybody else wants to vote for the left? Somebody has voted for the left. Right. Okay. Right. Right. Okay. Left. Right. Right. Okay. This is like marching. Left, right, left, right. Okay. Right. So, okay, let's stop there. Now, let me tell you who made these two lists, right? So this is made by the National Academy of Engineering in the US. This is made also in the US, but by a professor of environmental health, right? Okay. This is not only about the environment, but these kinds of achievements are more different to this, right? Okay. So what is the difference, right? Now, these are some of the differences. So this is about evaluating technology, right? So most of these are centralized applications, right? Or you can apply, right? This is distributed. Now, photovoltaics means you have solar panels on your roof, right? High-speed trains, everybody can use the train, right? So actually, high-speed trains is more mass society application, right? This is a specialist application. How many people can get involved in the moon landing? Of course, the people who go to the moon, right? Of course, maybe you might think it's a great human achievement. I mean, somebody has gone from the earth to the moon, right? And of course, there are technicians and engineers who made it happen, right? But there are specialist applications. This is resource intensive, requires a lot of resources. Here, some of these technologies at least are resource conserving, right? Alternative to chlorofluorocarbons, right? These CFCs are the things that made a hole in the ozone layer, right? This is hazardous waste biodegradation, solid waste biodegradation, concerned about the natural environment, organic agriculture. Now, of course, our president wants to go 100% organic agriculture. I'm not 100% sure whether that is the best thing to do. But anyway, organic agriculture is a concern for the natural environment. Here it's mostly about the built environment, right? Okay. This has to do with personal health. This has to do with public health, right? Solid waste, hazardous waste, to do with public health. Genetic engineering has to do with personal health, right? Okay. CAT scan, personal health. And these things tend to be controlling. There are some people in charge and other people just use it. Here, most of the people actually can be empowered by, right? Okay. So you can see that, there are different technologies. Now, you will also have to decide when you graduate, what technologies are you going to give your life to in order to, work for 30 or 40 years as an engineer. What are the things that you are going to be you're going to make a contribution? So think about these technologies. Think about the way to assess them, right? Okay. So these are some of the ways that you can audit the technology. What, if any, are there unintended consequences? Does it create wants or meet needs? How does it affect nature? Does it promote or reduce human equality? Does it empower or enslave the marginalized, that is poorer people? Does it promote or reduce community? Does it enhance or diminish personal character? And all the time, you have to develop a spirit of suspicion. That is once again something that this philosopher called Martin Heidegger talked about, right? We have to learn to be suspicious. Don't always look only at the surface, right? So how then should we live with technology? Well, I'm not saying you should stop using technology. You all are going to be engineers. So you have to engage with technology. But you should question some of the things, right? Be suspicious, right? Direct the technology towards better ends. Sometimes, even while working within a technology, you can subvert it, right? You can change the course of the technology. And in some cases, maybe you can reject the technology and create a counterculture, right? Okay. So actually, some of the owners of this, mobile phone companies and things like that, sometimes, they don't use mobile phones, right? Okay. So there are things like that also. The whole world is using mobile phones, but they're not using the mobile phone, right? So you have to be very suspicious about the kinds of technologies that you are sort of presented with, right? Okay. So let me stop there. How do I? Okay, there is one last video I have not. I'll play that at the end if we have time. Right. Now, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to take questions.
Thank you for your presentation. So now let's get into the Q&A session. So you can, participants can send your questions into the chat box. So you can unmute your microphone and ask questions yourself. So now it's your chance to ask Professor some questions regarding the topic. Okay, there are a few questions. So we discussed, you discussed about the present and past technologies that affect us. So with the current trends in the world, what do you think are the important technologies we need in the future? and how will these affect us?
Right. Okay. So not so easy to talk about the future. One of the things people are talking about is this robotics, right? Now we are interested in developing cleverer and cleverer robots. There are very serious people. I mean, one philosopher at Oxford University who thinks seriously that, there will come a time when the robots will treat us like slaves, right? That we will be the slaves of the robots, right? So I'm not sure. So that's something to think about, right? But that's an extreme example. Now, the human race is also in trouble, right? So there are some technologies, I think, that will become increasingly important just from an environmental point of view, right? Things like solar panels, right? Solar panels, of course, at the moment, what happens is the electricity generated in the solar panel is fed into the national grid, and you get maybe a reduction in your electricity bill, right? That will not be enough. We need to have the batteries to store the solar energy and then release it even at night, right? So the battery technology, right? Then there are other new energies like hydrogen energy technology, right? Even people are talking about fusion energy. Now, nuclear energy currently is called fission energy. In other words, you are splitting atoms and creating energy. But if you combine two hydrogen atoms and create helium, then that is called fusion energy. That's the way the sun produces energy also. So those energy technologies also will become increasingly important. And I don't know, there may be other technologies that make things easy for us, driverless cars and things like that. I don't know, difficult to say. But whatever the technology is, I think we need to, using some of those criteria that I gave, evaluate the technology, see whether we can mitigate any of its unintended consequences, check whether the technology is leading in one direction, and try to change that direction if at all possible. Yes. Okay. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Thank you, sir, for that answer. Sir, we discussed that we should personally draw the line of the technologies we use. So if they are useful to us or if they are harmful to us. So according to you, which are the technologies that you think we should avoid?
Right. So this is an individual choice. I will tell you that, from the time my wife and I got married and we had children, we decided not to have a television at home. Right now, this was, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago, right, or longer, right? And till both our children, I think the elder one finished the A-level and the younger one finished O-level, I think, right? We did not have a television at home, right? Now, not having a television at home also may not be a good thing because you can't watch the news. There are a lot of good programs on television, but we thought that was good for the family, right? So I think our children have, become reasonably good readers, right? I don't know how close our family relationships are, right? But that is one choice that we made, right? Because the television is something that it's only now of course we watch a lot of television. I have to confess how to we got a television, right? Now my wife and I watch a lot of Netflix movies and things like that. I have to tell you, right? But during the time that our children were growing up, we did not have a television at home. The thing is, television is only a one-way communication, right? At least a computer is better because a computer always you have to interact with the computer. Even if you are playing a computer game, you have to put some input, right? Television means you're only, sitting in front of it and just absorbing what it says, right? So you have to understand what the technology is doing, right? The other thing is, once again, when the children were growing up and also because of our economic status at that time, you may be knowing that university professors and teachers get reasonably well paid, especially a senior professor earns a lot of money now, right? 10 years ago, I was earning about 1/10 of what I'm earning now, right? I won't tell you the numbers, but that is because of food and various things. But those days, a typical university lecturer did not have much money, right? So, we had only one computer at home. right? So I needed it for my work. Then my wife also sometimes needed it because she was a teacher in a school, and then the children wanted to play games, right? Now it is a very good thing in a home to learn to share something like a computer, right? So then you have a lot of other human values getting developed, learning to share something, right? So that's what I'm saying, now we think if everybody has a device, then that is very convenient. But there are a lot of other things that we are unlearning because of that as humans. Okay, so this is personal use of technology, right? Now, technology affects us in personal ways like that. But there are bigger technologies like solar panels and other things that I talked about earlier. But I was responding to your question about personal choices regarding technology. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for that answer.
ඔබතුමා ප්‍රකාශ කළ ඔබතුමායි කලින් උත්තරේදී ඔබතුමා රූපවාහිනියට බැහැවීමක් සම්බන්ධයෙන්. දැන් අපි මේ දවස්වල වසංගතයකට මුහුණ දීලා ගෙවල් වල ඉඳගෙන අපි හැමදාම ඔන්ලයින් කරන්න පුරුදු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඔන්ලයින් කරද්දී අපිට නැතිවෙන බැරි දෙයක් තමයි දුරකථනය කියන්නේ. ඉතින් අපි දුරකථනයත් එක්ක දුරකථනයට වහල් නොවි අපි අනිත් අය සමග සාකච්ඡා කරන්නේ කොහොමද?
ඔව් ඉතින් දැන් මේ වසංගත තියෙන කාලේ ඉතින් තත්ත්වය ටිකක් වෙනස්නේ. ඉතින් හැම වෙලේම තිබුණ තත්ත්වයට වඩා ටිකක් වෙනස්. හැබැයි ඒ උනාට හැමතිස්සම මේ Zoom එකෙන් කතා කරන එකෙන් නැත්නම් මේ මොබයිල් ෆෝන්ස් වලින් කතා කරන එකෙන් ඒකෙන්වත් මං හිතන්නේ පුද්ගලික පීඩන ඇති වෙනවා කට්ටියට. හරිද? ඉතින් ඒකට පිළිතුර මං හිතන්නේ සමහර අවස්ථාවලදී ඒක භාවිතා නොකර ඉන්න. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ වටපිට ඒ කියන්නේ gedara වටපිටේ ඉන්න අය එක්ක කතා කිරීමෙන් සීමා කරන එක. හරිද? ඉතින් දැන් මේ විතරම gedara ඉන්න එකෙන් මං හිතන්නේ ඒකෙන් මේ ඒකට පිළිතුරක් හැටියට මේ ඉන්ටර්නෙට් එකයි ටෙලිවිෂන් ඔයි ඒක පාවිච්චි කරුවට මං හිතන්නේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ. වෙනතට වඩා වැඩියෙන් පාවිච්චි කරුවට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ. හැබැයි ඒ වුණාටත් මං හිතන්නේ යම්කිසි සීමා තියා ගන්නවා. right? ඒ ටෙලිවිෂන් එකටයි ඉන්ටර්නෙට් එකටයි නිතරම ඇබ්බැහි වීමෙන් ඒකනේ මං හිතන්නේ අපිට මේ අපේ නිකන් පර්සනැලිටි එකට යම්කිසි වෙනස් වීම ඇති වෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒක ගැන සුපරීක්ෂාකාරීව මේ අපිට නිකන් ඒ පැත්තෙන් අපිට නිකන් පරිස්සම් වෙන්න. ඔව්. මම දැන් ඒක හරියට උත්තර දුන්නා.
Thank you, sir. In your speech, we talk about why we need to minimize the use of technology. How can we do this practically?
Yeah, so I gave some examples about our home, about televisions and things like that. The other thing is now, okay, I'll give you another personal example. It's embarrassing to talk about these examples, personal examples, but now for many years, now even then, like I said, as university academics, relatively speaking, we did not earn very much, no. So I used to travel to work by bus, right? Now that is a particular kind of technology, right? And of course, it is less carbon intensive, right? Because of a bus, of course, it burns a lot of diesel and things like that. But for every kilometer you go, there are 50 people who are going that 1 kilometer for the diesel being burned. If you're going in a car, maybe only one person is going and that petrol is being consumed, right? So those kinds of personal decisions also can be taken, right? Okay. There are some people who have decided to be vegetarian, friends of ours, right? Who think that being vegetarian means that there is less environmental damage, right, to the environment. Okay. So there are some personal decisions that you can take like that, right? Yeah, I mean, I have not done this personally, but even things like, growing trees in whatever gardens we have, right? That also helps to reduce the carbon dioxide, right? And also maybe, you can get some fruits or you can get some, vegetables or something like that. You can do things like that, right? To minimize always effect of technology on our lives, right? Okay, and also to think that it is not only technology that is going to be of use in making a better society. Like I gave that example of the Gutenberg Press, there are many other things also that have to come into place, right? So to recognize that we have to think about those things also. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So
Okay,
I
okay.
remind you,
Somebody is asking a question about blockchain. Right? Were you going to read that out? Right? Okay, now actually I must say that I am a little bit ignorant about this blockchain technology. Blockchain is a kind of a new cryptocurrency, is it? Is it a cryptocurrency? I don't know whether Dr. Prince will help me out here or somebody else. What is this blockchain? Maybe I should know about it, but very embarrassing. Blockchain.
We have a few students who are doing projects on blockchain.
Okay, so tell me what it's about very broadly.
So thank you very much for the ideas, and I was asking because the recent topics was going on this cryptos and this blockchain concept in everywhere, and recently like the was hacked, and there was a session on this cryptos and blockchain.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I pointed out.
Okay, okay. So the blockchain technology is like a cryptocurrency, right?
I'm also not big.
Much. I think if it's a cryptocurrency, one of the things is, of course, that it is not subject to any government regulation, right? That you know. So now sometimes government regulation can be not a very good thing, right? I mean, say for example, the value of the rupee today, right? The government says it's something like 200 rupees to $1, right? But everywhere it's in the world, it's about 230 rupees to $1. So that's government intervention. So maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. But so if you have these kinds of currencies, then it is free from government interference, and sometimes that may be better for the economy, right? But I really don't have much knowledge about blockchain to make any kind of definitive statement on that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Professor. Excuse me, Professor. Just a little interrupt. Blockchain is the technology behind the cryptocurrency.
The technology behind the cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Blockchain,
right.
Blockchain has far more advantages when it comes to medical and the other cybersecurity technologies.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Right.
If you have any more questions, you can ask now.
This is for the participants. Please fill the feedback form of our session. The link is in the chat.
Okay, if there aren't any questions, shall I play that last video? Is it okay? Do we have time?
Okay, sir.
Right. Let's see. I need to do something. Oops. How do I? Yeah. Right, this may be having some philosophical ideas, but anyway, let's try and listen to it.
Value Neutral by Boaz Miller. This is the most downloaded paper on philpapers.org for January 2021. In this video, I'll be explaining what the title of the paper means, some of Miller's arguments, plus some interesting examples, implications, and applications of his ideas. We often speak of people, their actions, ideologies, and mental states as having moral properties. People can have virtues or vices, actions can be morally good or bad, ideologies can promote certain values, and so on. One way of putting this is that these things are all value-laden. But what about technology? Can technology have some of these moral properties as well? Many people think that the answer is no, technology can't be value-laden, but rather technology is value-neutral. After all, it's not the technology that acts, it's people who act. Whether a knife is used to prepare food or kill someone is not up to the knife. It's up to a person who uses that knife. So it's easy to see why value neutrality with respect to technology is an intuitive and widely held position. However, as Miller points out, although popular, value neutrality is not a widely supported position among philosophers of technology. He also thinks that philosophers of technology haven't dealt with the arguments for value neutrality in a satisfactory way. So that's what he's setting out to do in this paper, by addressing one particular argument for value neutrality. The argument that Miller addresses is given by Joseph Pitt in the paper Guns Don't Kill, People Kill, Values in or Around Technology. Pitt's position is basically that you can't tell what values an artifact promotes or embodies just by looking at it. So the values can't be in the artifact. In other words, we need to look elsewhere to apply moral judgment. Before we get into the core of Miller's argument, some clarifications. What is technology? This is a difficult question, and Miller doesn't try to settle it in his paper. But for practical purposes, he settles on a narrow definition, where technology refers to anything that is made to perform a function.
All you have to do is think of things that people need, but which don't exist.
What could it mean for an object to have something intangible, like a value? Well, we can use the example of something with a different kind of value, money. Money's value is dependent both on certain physical features and how it fits into a social network of beliefs, traditions, values, dispositions, and behaviors. It's not just a matter of individual opinion that a $5 bill is worth $5, but you also can't see that value in the fibers of the note itself. But if we're not talking about the kind of exchange value that money has, what kind of value are we talking about? We're talking about moral or ethical values, which we could define as anything that lets you choose between or rank different possible situations. So with that, here's the condition that Miller gives for identifying values in technology. If an artifact is designed to perform a function, has physical features intended to help fulfill that function, and that function is value-laden, then the artifact embodies value. Like finding out the value of a coin, finding these types of values in technology can involve investigating and thinking about the relation of that technology to society, intentions, expected outcomes, and so on. So contrary to Pitt, values don't have to be recognizable in an object. In other words, the moral significance of some technology could be hidden from us. One simple strategy for identifying values in technology is as follows. You can ask, why is this designed and built the way it is? For example, why is this knife designed like this? So it can cut bread. Cutting bread is pretty value neutral though. But what about these stones embedded in the concrete under a bridge? They're pretty obviously designed to stop homeless people from sleeping somewhere. That makes them value-laden because they represent a preference for a state of affairs that's significant for the well-being of certain persons. In fact, it seems that artifacts can be value-laden in the same way that human actions are. They represent our intentions, and by extension our values, beliefs, and character, and they have morally significant effects. But doesn't this just trivialize the thesis that technology can be value-laden? No, as Miller argues, the value-ladenness of technology has some special qualities and implications due to the nature of technology itself. And here are a few reasons why. Replacing or amending artifacts is especially difficult, so we should be extra careful about the values we express through them. Technology also shapes future technology. Think about how much technological advancement today is based on our already standing commitment to the technology of cars as a way of getting around. Technology can also induce or even force certain kinds of action. The simplest example is a wall placed on a path. That wall, as a piece of technology, forces people to walk around it. Technology can also reward, manipulate, or prompt certain actions, making them more likely. Good examples of these are machines that encourage gambling behavior, or social media in the way that it alters the values and incentives of how we interact with each other. Technology also makes certain courses of action possible. potentially creating new moral obligations, and even altering our conception of the good life. And finally, denying the potential of technology to be value-laden could allow those who design and make technology to avoid taking responsibility for what they create, even when they have clear moral implications.
So is it any wonder people are afraid of technology? Technology!
So I hope that was an interesting introduction to the philosophy of technology. Personally, I'm excited to apply some of these ideas to areas and subjects that I'm interested in.
Right. I think we are done with that. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for having me. Yes. Okay. I hope that was useful. Right. Okay.
So thank you very much for accepting our invitation. We had a great session. It was very interesting and informative. We learned a lot from you. We didn't even realize the time has passed. So thank you very much once again. Also, I would like to thank Dr. Gunawardena, the Director of Career Guidance Unit, University of Ruhuna. And I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Priyan, Faculty of Engineering. Without her support, this session would haven't been successful. Also, I would like to thank Ms. Linda Valihena, the Career Council of Faculty of Engineering. And last but not least, I thank you all of participants who joined with us today. Thank you, then. Thank you again, sir. We do appreciate spending your time with us.
Okay. Thank you very much. I enjoyed talking to you all. I hope you enjoyed listening. Right. Okay.